There are certain sins, there are certain lines that when you eventually cross them, there's just no going back from it. There's no amount of apologizing, there is no amount of begging that can erase what you've already done. In terms of personal relationships, I think most people would consider cheating to be an unforgivable sin. Once you step out on your husband or wife, there's just no going back from that. The relationship is changed forever, will never be the same. Now, some therapist will come up with convincing reasons as to why you should give your marriage another chance. This wasn't an emotional affair, it was physical, or it only happened once, let's forgive and forget. Yeah, some people can do it. Some people can get over the affair and maintain their relationship. Now, I have never been in that situation before personally, but if it happened to me, I don't think I would be able to get over it. Once trust is gone, you're never getting it back. Like I've said before, though, there is a lot of similarities between business relationships and personal relationships. The foundations are the same. Trust. Now, sure, it's different levels of trust. The trust in your personal relationship goes far deeper than the trust you have in some corporation, but that does not mean that the attachment we have with certain brands is any less personal. For decades, millions of Americans trusted Bud Light. It was the #1 selling beer in America. The company branded itself as a beacon of Americana. When you went to a sporting event, most people were drinking Bud Light. After 9/11, they produced patriotic commercials. They have donated millions of dollars to support military veterans. Bud Light has done a lot of good. They spent decades building their brand. And one mistake, one lapse in judgment ruined all of that goodwill in the span of 24 hours. You guys know the mistake I'm talking about. I'm not going to sit here and ruin your evening by sharing that horrendous Bud Light commercial that featured the face of Dylan Mulvaney. I'm sure most of you guys have spent the last 8 months trying to forget about it. In my lifetime, I have never seen a major brand, a major corporation, receive the amount of backlash that Bud Light received with their collaboration with Bobby D. I think executives at Bud Light thought all of this was going to blow over. It never did. Now, the boycott's not generating headlines in the mainstream media anymore. Bud Light is no longer trending every day on social media, but the boycott is still alive. It just transitioned from an angry boycott to more of a silent boycott. Bud Light's lost billions of dollars since their decision to enter into holy matrimony with Dylan Mulvaney. That's okay. That's okay. The marketing department at Bud Light, they have come up with a brilliant plan. Even though he has been retired for almost a decade now, Peyton Manning, he is still one of the most popular athletes in America. He still has a high profile because of the Manning cast every Monday night. Throughout his NFL career, Peyton Manning, he was a sought-after brand ambassador. It's been almost 20 years at this point. I can still remember his MasterCard commercial. Cut that meat! Cut that meat! Apparently, Dylan Mulvaney was inspired by that commercial. According to something called Morning Consult, Peyton Manning, he's got a 70% approval rating among sports fans. Now, if you included him in a favorability poll with our fearless leader John Biden, Peyton Manning, he would have a 100% approval rating. Over the last few months, Bud Light, they have been begging for normal people to forgive them. Before the NFL season, they became one of the primary sponsors of the NFL. No one cared. Last month, Dana White announced that Bud Light would be the primary sponsor of the UFC. No one cared. With their latest act of contrition, with their next desperate attempt to appeal to normal people, Bud Light decided to hire Peyton Manning to be the face of their new marketing campaign. Over the weekend, the commercials featuring Peyton Manning debuted on NFL Sunday. If you were watching Sunday Night Football on NBC last night, not only were you treated to a triple dose of cheerleading featuring Simone Biles, Taylor Swift, and the most popular cheerleader in the NFL, the dancing queen Jackie Mahomes, you also witnessed the latest groveling from Bud Light. The commercial was about a minute long, but I trimmed it down for copyright reasons. Watch for yourself.
2 Bud Lights, please. Actually, make it a round for the bar.
Round for the bar!
There you go. Okay.
Look. I like Peyton Manning, but this commercial, it did absolutely nothing to convince me to drink Bud Light. However, I wasn't really a Bud Light drinker to begin with. In my 39 years, I can't think of one time that I have bought something either because I saw a commercial. So it's entirely possible that millions of men saw this commercial last night. They saw Peyton Manning endorsing Bud Light, and millions of dudes decided to forgive and forget. After all, it's been 8 months. This boycott, it's gone on long enough, right? Time for everyone to move on? While that is possible, I just don't see it happening. For starters, Bud Light, they have already tried this same strategy several times in the last few months. Remember back in August, they ran commercials featuring Travis Swiffer. They also had him lecture dudes on social media, telling them they were being ridiculous for boycotting a great American brand like Bud Light. Casey, who in the hell is Travis Swiffer? What do you mean? He's the tight end for the Kansas City Commanders, formerly known as the Kansas City Chiefs. His maiden name is Kelsey. He changed his last name because he is anticipating marriage with Taylor Swiffer. My inside sources tell me the Swiffers, they're not married just yet, but Travis, he is waiting for Taylor to propose. Anyway, Bud Light, they ran a campaign featuring Travis Swiffer. Didn't work. They ran a marketing campaign featuring Dak Prescott. Now, obviously, that didn't work. Dak Prescott, he can't convince Jerry Jones that he's a franchise quarterback. How is he going to convince millions of angry dudes to forgive Bud Light? They partnered with George Kittle. Didn't work. They were active on college campuses throughout football season. Do you guys remember Alyssa Heine? She was that doofus marketing executive that hired Dylan Mulvaney back in April. She was also responsible for telling frat boys on college campuses that Bud Light was no longer their preferred beer for college fraternity parties. Unfortunately for Bud Light, those college kids, they listened. Months later, Bud Light shows up on campus begging broke college students to take their free beer. No one's interested. Like I said a minute ago, they partnered with the NFL and the UFC. Now keep in mind, all these partnerships, they have happened since July 1st. Even with all this star power and influence, sales of Bud Light declined by 13% in the third quarter. If you want to look at it positively, you can make a strong case that these partnerships have worked. Instead of sales declining by the usual 20, 25, 30%, they only declined by 13%. We heading in the right direction. It does not matter who Bud Light hires at this point. It is not going to change public perception. For starters, habits have already changed here. Supposedly, it takes 30, 45, 60 days for someone to break a habit. In the case of Bud Light, people have already been given 8 months to break it. More importantly, though, Bud Light failed to do the one thing that could have made all this go away. Now, I don't think it would have tempered the outrage in the short term, but long term, it might have helped them out. Of course, it's too late to do it now, but the one thing that Bud Light failed to do, they failed to apologize. 8 months, 240 days, and not one time has Bud Light said the words, "I'm sorry," or "we fucked up, this will never happen again." How are people supposed to forgive you when you never asked for forgiveness? You had your doofus CEO making the media rounds this summer. He's dressed in his suit, sitting next to King Gale on CBS this morning, trying to justify his actions. Bud Light has sent out numerous press releases in an attempt to put out the scorching ass fire. Not one time did any of those press releases contain two simple words: "I'm sorry." The question is, why? Executives at Bud Light, they're not stupid. The people responsible for running multi-billion-dollar corporations, they didn't get those jobs by being a dumbass. They know America is a forgiving country, so why has Bud Light been so unwilling to apologize? We can only speculate at this point, but I think Bud Light refused to issue an apology because they didn't feel like they did anything wrong. What other reason would they have to not apologize? I don't know about you guys, but when I feel like I've done nothing wrong, I'm not apologizing. Normally, I'm not big on public apologies anyway, but in the case of Bud Light, it was one of those rare situations where a public apology, I thought it was needed. They just refused to do it. They thought all of this would blow over. They thought people would be mad for a little while, maybe even through the summer, but once football season started, everything would go back to normal. We have seen it happen with boycotts in the past, but there was just a huge difference here with Bud Light. This was not Ulta Beauty. This wasn't Victoria's Secret. This wasn't a brand that mainly targets women. Bud Light pissed off men. The reason the backlash was so severe, most people didn't expect this type of behavior from Bud Light. Sadly, we have come to expect this from brands like Ulta Beauty to partner with Dylan Mulvaney. We've come to expect Victoria's Secret to hire Chad Thundercock to model their tuck-friendly bathing suits. I don't think people expected it from Bud Light. We'll see if it works, though. We will see if Peyton Manning was enough to convince people to give Bud Light another chance. The reaction on social media this weekend, overwhelmingly negative, but I'm not going to read too much into that. I mean, the reaction to anything on social media is overwhelmingly negative, but I just don't think one commercial with Peyton Manning is enough to convince people to forgive Bud Light. But what about you, though? Have you seen the full commercial? Was it enough to convince you to drink Bud Light again? Why do you think this boycott's lasted so long? Do you think Bud Light's failure to apologize is part of the reason for it? Or would an apology have just been meaningless and had no impact? Let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share the video. I appreciate you guys and your continued support. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.